Let me welcome you to the 51st lecture of NPTEL online drilling and online certification course drilling and blasting technology. We are discussing about the special blasting techniques. So, this is the third topic in the special blasting technique. In this topic we will discuss underwater blasting. There are two lectures in underwater blasting. This is the first lecture of this one. So, in this lecture we will try to understand what is underwater blasting, how that is carried out. But before that, let us retrospect so far what we have covered. We have covered the performance evaluation of blasting and blasting results in last few lectures. Those are related to the powder factor, rock mass fragmentations, and we have discussed and solved some numericals related to the performance calculations of the performance parameters and cost analysis. And we also covered basics of drilling and blasting technology, understanding rock explosive interactions. We have seen how the rock and rock mass properties are influencing blasting results, and now in currently we are discussing the special blasting techniques. So far we have covered ring hole blasting techniques and vertical cutter retreat process, those we have covered, and in this lecture we will try to cover the underwater blasting operations. So, the learning objective of this lecture and the next lecture, there are two lectures on underwater blasting. We will cover the what is basically we will try to understand what is underwater blasting and where this underwater blasting is supposed to be carried out, how this underwater blasting is designed, and what are the procedure to carry on this underwater blasting. So, this slide preparation and material collection credit goes to Tarun Kumar Sethi and Dr. Satyabrata Behera, those who are research scholar in IIT Kharagpur. First, understand what is underwater blasting. Underwater blasting means when we are carrying out drilling, in that drilling we place our explosive inside the hole, but this complete drill hole is under the water, that is below the water level, is considered as the underwater blasting. Now, there is a little bit difference between the watery hole and the underwater blasting, and let us understand that difference first. In this case, suppose we are having our earth strata like this, our surface mining benches, and we are having groundwater table lying like this. So, what is happening in this case, if we are carrying out some drilling at this place, so the moment we drill here, the water is percolating here and we will find the drill hole is filled with the water. This condition is called watery holes. Okay. The difference is that this is not considered as the underwater blasting. This is not underwater blasting. This is the blasting of watery hole, but not underwater blasting. The problem here is that the hole is intact, there is no problem with the hole, only the water is filled with the percolated groundwater. So, what is happening, the moment we are placing some explosive, that explosive is in contact with the water. So, the problem is that here we need an explosive which have a density greater than 1, so that it should go below the water or disperse the water and set itself in the bottom of the hole, and by that way we have to get the proper compaction of the explosive inside the hole. That is the requirement, and this explosive must be water resistive. Should have good water resistance, so that it will not act with the water and its explosibility remain intact when it is coming to the contact with the water. But the condition is different when we are declaring the underwater blasting. This is the water level, and there is a surface. In that surface we may have trees. So, this is the underwater, this is the earth crust, and we have to carry out our drilling in this place, and we have to blast it using explosive. So, here the earth crust is at this position, above that there is a accumulation of water of certain height, and the drilling and blasting, this process has to be carried out below this water level. So, that is why this is in this condition, whatever is the blasting procedure is carried out is called underwater blasting. So, now where we will be forced to carry out this type of underwater practicing this type of underwater blasting. So, for this let us again go back to our slide. So, this type of blasting practices are carried out generally below the river, below the sea, below the lakes, for laying the pipelines, putting the cables, or sometimes depending of the ports, so that the ship can enter into that place, or for some excavation of the civil foundations like the construction of jetties, etc. So, for those cases generally we have to go for underwater blasting. In mining, sometimes if required, we may have to carry out underwater blasting in some pits for the deepening of the some pits if that is required. Okay. Otherwise, mostly the underwater blasting is practiced by the civil people, and they are more fond of this one. So, before going to the details of this, let us see this video which is available in the YouTube, and you can see this is how the underwater blasting is practiced. Say this person is the diver. Okay, this diver is entering into the bottom of the water, and he is the drilling is already carried out whole either by this diver or by the surface pontoon. So, he is now placing the explosive inside the hole. See, now this problem is you are solely depending on the divers to do all this work, and the diver is a professional diver. He is not the person who is expert in explosive. So, basically you are depending on the person who is not expert in the explosive and blasting, but he is basically allowed to carry out the charging of the holes, placing the explosive inside the hole, and then he has to stem those things. So, they are placing the explosive in the hole, then the diver is pushing the cartridges using this rod. So, he is pushing this one inside the hole, then he is placing some stemming material inside that, and after that he is coming out from the water, then the blasting is carried out below the water level. See, the blasting is carried out now and the explosion is already taken place. So, this is basically the way. Now, you can see the fragmented rock post blast, as the diver is showing us the post blast, the fragmented rocks, you can see by explosion the rocks are basically broken. So, now you can use a dredger to remove this blasted rocks from the place, and that can be easily carried out. So, this is one video which is available in the YouTube. You can see it in the YouTube, the links are given here. There are not only this, there are many such videos are available in the YouTube. Now, what are the key features in the underwater blasting? The problem is that here the drilling and charging has to be carried out either from the surface or by using the divers, because the technically qualified or competent persons cannot go below the water, because they are not trained for that. Second is that as you do not know how the drilling is made, and the proper stemming inside the water is very difficult. So, that is why the powder factor has to be very high compared to the bench blasting. So, 3 to 6 times higher powder factor has to be placed here, and very often the results are not satisfactory, because neither the drilling has the significant accuracy nor the proper charging and explosion can be carried out. So, big boulders generates, the total process became costly. The explosive must be water resistive and they must withstand the hydrostatic pressure. That means, if it is very deep below a sea or that, whatever the water pressure, the explosive should be capable to withstand that pressure, and it is essentially required that it must be having a density higher than the water, otherwise it will float back to the water, it will not be inside the hole. And there are many environmental effects. The moment you will blast, the shock waves travels all around, and that kill the sea fishes, etc. So, those are the problems occurs, and that is very important one, and one must be very careful on that. So, what very important problem we face is that, suppose this is your water level and you have the surface, earth surface at this place, and you have to drill this one. First problem here, the difficulty we face is to have this accurate drilling. We are having two options, either we send some divers to carry out a drilling here at this place, or we have to carry out the drilling from the surface pontoons. So, from this surface pontoon this drilling has to be carried out. So, this is for both the cases, the person while he is carrying out this diver who is not very technically qualified carrying out drilling at this place, below the water with so many currents, waves in the water, etc., to having a good accuracy in the drilling is very, very difficult. Same thing happened when it is carried out from the above the water surface using a ship or using a pontoon, etc., which is anchored somewhere or maybe in the surface itself. In that case, keeping this drilling accuracy is very, very difficult. That is the first problem. So, having a very good well planned drilling is very difficult in underwater condition. The second problem is that once the drilling is carried out, the moment you lift this drill rod, it is always that there are some slashes accumulated in the top of the rock or competent ground because of the accumulation of the water. Those trying to be deposited inside the hole and that fill the hole prior to placing the explosive there. So, there is a problem of the integrity of the hole. The moment you complete the drilling and you lift the rod, the hole is again filled with the slashes or clays material whichever available in the near surface of the bottom of the water body. It may be bottom of the lake or bottom of the sea or bottom of the river. So, that part is basically coming into the hole and that will block the hole. You will not get the whole integrated hole to place the explosive inside that. So, this is very difficult condition, and that is why the moment drilling is carried out, immediately you have to thinking of placing a casing there. You have to place a casing so that the hole remain intact and you can place the explosive. But the problem is, in this case, if there is a very deep water bodies, you have to keep the casing up to the top surface, because the moment you will leave it here, it may slash may come inside. So, you have to keep this one and you have to place the charge from the surface itself, then you have to gradually remove the casing. So, that is the problem, or otherwise you have to keep a small casing here and you have to blast with the casing. So, that will reduce the effectiveness of the explosive. So, these are the difficulties, and these difficulties are creating the problem of underwater blasting a lot. So, first is that we have very little information of the rock and rock mass. We do not have any idea about the topographical precision. So, but we have to carry out the drilling there. Maintaining the hole is very difficult, and the moment we take out the drill bit, it fills. So, keep the hole open for a long time is very difficult one. That difficulty has to be overcome, and difficult to control the collar, blast hole deviation, because drilling is very problematic, and if it is carried out from the floating condition from the surface of the water, then it is again further difficult to control the deviations. Complicated planning, because you do not have any idea about the condition of the rock, but the planning has to be carried out without seeing that one, or basically these observations are taken from the divers who are not technically expert, but based on that, because the technical experts cannot go below the water body, they have to stay above the water body, and the decision has to be taken by them. And the risk of flashing of the holes are there, and there are huge number of secondary blasting, and that impact the cost. So, for mostly cases, generally once the topographical survey can be carried out, in fact, these are carried out when in general we go for drilling for big oils etc., because those oils are very costly. So, that investment for making the topographical survey by seismic method or the radio method, laser method, all those are basically carried out for those big investment where the oil rig etcetera are drilled in the underwater conditions, say like in Arabian Sea, Trombay, where the oil rigs are made. In those conditions, the topographical survey prior to the drilling is carried out, and these are the different ways to carry out the topographical survey. Topographical surveys are carried out from the top of the surface using a sea, and when the from the topographical survey we get some idea, we can go for drilling in those cases. So, but those are limited for the oil rigs etcetera. Generally for underwater blasting conditions, where the blasting is carried out, the information related to rock etcetera are taken by the divers and taken from the cuttings or of the drills, drill cuttings, which are taken out and given by the divers. Based on that, the decisions are taken. So, basically the drilling and blasting in underwater conditions are carried out using three basic considerations. One is drilling and blasting through rock fill. That means, where the water bodies are there, but the water bodies are filled, say like a pond, you have to carry out the drilling and blasting below that pond, you fill the pond, then you carry on your drilling and blasting. So, this is one way you can do. Second one is that you can carry out drilling from the surface, surface means the top of the water body, and blasting either using a floating pontoon or rafts or etcetera, or some elevating platform. So, you made that platform from where you will carry out your drilling and blasting, the informations of the bottom you take from the divers, and you carry out your all work from that place. So, that is the second condition, and third is that the complete drilling and blasting is carried out by the divers, where divers are allowed to go inside the water body and they will do the drilling using the jackhammer or some pneumatic hammer or electrically operated drill machines etcetera. They are also having some oxygen facilities for their own breathing. Similarly, the blasting you have just seen in the video has to be carried out by the divers, but they have to go inside that. In that case, a number of divers we need to have, and they should have very good knowledge related to the drilling and blasting, then only this can be carried out. So, let us go into the first one, where the drilling and blasting is carried out through the rock fill. So, suppose this is a pond like situation, where these are the water body and we have to carry out drilling and blasting below this. So, for that our first option is that we have to fill this one using these boulders. So, after filling the complete area using the boulders, then we will allow our drill machine to walk onto the boulder. So, these filled boulders will act as the platform to the drill machine. Then we go for drilling, first initially through the filled boulders, then through the competent ground, which basically we are intended for. And after carrying out this drilling, we place our explosive and carry out blasting. This is already fragmented, this part we are allowed to blast, and this part will generate the generation of boulders, and later on when we will by this way we will basically blast this part and we will go for fragmenting this one, and then when we will place the excavator will excavate this complete portion, and our new excavation will like this, and we can have our desired depth of excavation in this case. But this is having a serious difficulty. The main difficulty here is that drilling through this filled rock is very difficult. This allows huge deviation of the drill rods, and also the collapsing of the holes are likely chances are there, and the drilling for or the filled rock is very difficult. Most of the cases we opt for a rotary drill here, but then also this portion is very difficult where the rock filled condition is there, and in that case we are carrying out the drilling hole. So, the integration of the drill hole is difficult. Second is that filling and again unfilling that one is very costly. It is depending on the size of the area water bodies where we are going for filling. So, if that size is very big, in that case the filling cost is very high, and again excavating that part is becoming costlier. So, the complete process is very costly, and that is why this is not in general practice for blasting condition, underwater blasting conditions, especially for civil engineering purpose where it is carried out. For very small or not very big water bodies like small rivers etc., they are for construction of the piles. Generally we go for this technique where we go for filling that one, then we go for drilling and blasting of that place, that is basically practiced on those conditions. Otherwise generally we do not practice for carrying out filling, drilling and blasting in rock filled conditions. So, most of the cases we go for drilling and blasting from the floating pontoons. We can have pontoons or we can have structures. So, these are the basically figures of this one. We will continue with this underwater blasting from the pontoons and rafts in the next class. We have already discussed these difficulties little bit. So, we will continue this part in the next class. Thank you.